Welcome to another episode of the Saddle Up Show. And I'm feeling a little better now that the Colts got their first win of the season, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate y'all for coming out. It's definitely a lot we got to talk about today, but it always feels a little bit sweeter when we're doing these things fresh off of victory. You know, it's a lot to talk about, especially with Anthony Richardson, and we're going to get into that, man. Uh, let's just kind of start with the Jags. Not the Jags, I'm sorry. The Texans. Two losing organizations, by the way. But let's talk about the Texans, man, because this was a game that if the Colts want to be considered not a serious contender, but a, a fairly average to good team, they have to beat teams like this, you know. And I think they dominated through the entire game. That game was always in control from start to finish. We'll get into a little bit of the individual performances and which units shine and which units didn't. But the Colts dominated this game from start to finish. Even after Anthony Richardson, who was off to a phenomenal start, suffered his injury, Gardner Minshew came in and the team just they didn't lose a step, you know, and that's what you want to have out of a backup quarterback. Um, I thought a two-score game from the Colts is something we haven't seen in a while. Feels like forever ago the last time we saw the Colts beat somebody by multiple scores. But this Texans team was in bad, bad shape, man. Like it had to be done, and it did get done. And that's credit to the Colts because we saw times just go back to last year, you know, the season opener, all these expectations was on the Colts, and the Colts wasn't able to pick up a victory. You know, they had to settle for a tie. And you know, the organization, the coaching staff, it seems like they're in a much better place right now. I know the fan base is in a much better place right now. And it seems like we excel whenever media takes all those expectations off of us. You notice that whenever they're hyping us saying we're the sleeper team, the team to look out for is when the Colts don't perform. And now that they kind of backed off and expectations has came down on the Colts from a national perspective, it seems like the Colts really thrive in those situations. The underdog role, back against the wall, and trust me, they're going to be an underdog this week with their back against the wall, um, traveling on the road to the Baltimore Ravens to play Lamar Jackson and that team who's playing really good ball right now. We're going to get into that later. But some of the people I want to talk about from the Texans' performance, we talked about, you know, pretty much Gardner Minshew, and we can get to the Anthony Richardson thing while we're here, or discussing quarterback position. Um, it was unfortunate, the injury, considering the start that he got off to. I mean, the two quarterback design runs that he scored touchdowns off was phenomenal play design. The first one was just blocked up really good. The offensive line, wide receivers, tight end, everybody blocked really well on that. And he showed the burst, that gear that we know he has, that 4.4 speed. And as he burst through the line of scrimmage, it was over. You know, nobody was going to get him. The second one was a really good play design by Shane Steichen. Man, using that motion to kind of get the defense going in one direction. Anthony Richardson keeps it. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Michael Pittman with a key block to spring that whole thing. And as he was going in, he said he didn't see the guy, I believe it was number 23, as he was coming from his left-hand side. And he took a really big shot. And as he landed, his head snapped back and landed on the turf. And that turf just don't give like that grass do, man. There's no give with that turf. That is solid. That's turf is hard, man. So he went in a couple drives after, then reported himself, you know, to the team doctors and the coaching staff, and they checked him out. And they placed him in concussion protocol. I know people are upset saying, you know, he came out the first game. Now he's coming out of another game. Let's keep it in perspective. The first game, he could have went back and played. If that game was still a winnable game, he would have went back in and played for sure, 100%. The second game was just, you know, it was a concussion. It happens. He didn't see the guy. I don't know how he could have protected himself better. I guess he could have just ran the play out full speed. But if you don't see the guy, I mean, you don't see the guy. I can't argue with a man about what he saw during the play that's moving at 1,000 miles an hour. But we all know Anthony Richardson does need to, I guess, take better care of himself because we need him around. We definitely need him around, and we need him here for the long term. I'm not too concerned with it. I know some people are freaking out saying he hasn't finished the game yet in his NFL career, and I guess technically you're right. But I'm not overly concerned with it. If it's football, it's going to get hit. He's the face of the franchise, so I understand he's under a different microscope. You know, people are looking at this differently. Shout out to Brad. Brad said when he first left the game, I thought it was from the hit he took. Yeah. A lot of people did because he got blasted, man. He got rocked on the hit, but it was the actual head snapping back. CJ Stroud got hit similar with Kenny Moore hit him. I mean, the head didn't land, but I mean the hit itself. Kenny Moore blew him up on the sideline, man. It was a big time hit. It just wasn't that head slam against the turf to kind of, make it look worse than what it actually was. But I'm just glad to see Anthony Richardson was good. Saw him several times after the game. Seems like he's fine. But he didn't practice today. He did not. And him and Ryan Kelly as well is in concussion protocol. And, to get out of concussion protocol, you have to have a limited participation in practice, a full participation in practice, and get cleared by the individual doctor. And then you'll be able to play again. Like Drew Ogletree was cleared from concussion protocol and could have played last game, but the coach decided to opt on the cautious side and keep him out. That's kind of where I'm leaning at with this. I know it's not the popular thing, and I know people are upset probably by it, but I just think you probably want to be cautious with the face of your franchise, man. The guy that's supposed to carry your organization for the next decade or two. I just think you got to be real careful with this one, man. For him to actually play this Sunday, he'll probably need to have a limited participation tomorrow, and he's definitely going to have a full practice on Friday in order for him to be activated and clearing concussion protocol to be able to go Sunday noon against the Ravens. A couple of people I want to show love to. The offensive line was outstanding against the Texans. Ryan Kelly, he's found the mojo again. I know people was trashing him and wanted him gone. And I tweeted in the offseason that this Shane Steichen scheme can do benefits for him. If he can be weaponized similar to the way Jason Kelsey was used in Philadelphia. I know he's not quite the athlete that Jason Kelsey is, but Ryan Kelly still has some good ball left in him. Glad to see he's playing well. I know he suffered a concussion. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Quentin Nelson is Quentin Nelson. Bernard Ryman, he's good, man. He's been playing really well. I believe he's charted at only allowing one pressure so far this season, no sacks. So somebody that people was on the fence about, and I was encouraged with the way he played in the back half of last year, but he's really starting to show some strides, man. And he's having a really good season so far. Will Fries was number one on the most wanted list among Colts fans for guys they wanted replaced this offseason. And I know Ballard didn't go pick up another guard. Didn't even address the right guard situation. Besides from a depth perspective, he playing well, man. He is playing well. Probably the worst offensive lineman is probably Braden Smith. And I think he's still been playing average, solid. He's not playing bad at all. Just had some difficult matchups so far, actually, drawing the two guys that he drew, Will Anderson and Josh Allen. But he's been fine. So the offensive line, man, give it up for him. The pass catchers was good. Michael Pittman, another 8-grab game. He has been pretty much doing what I've wanted to see from him. He has 16 catches so far this season. That's tied for third in the NFL right now. I wrote a piece about him earlier this week because he just needs some love. I know we spend time arguing about is he a legit number one receiver in the NFL, and I think he's out to prove himself this season. Uh, Josh Downs, the rookie, had 4 grabs, I believe. Will Mallory made some big catches. The first one in particular, the first catch of your career being a 42-yarder, 43-yarder is pretty special. So I'm excited for that guy. And Colin Granson, who has been just having a great offseason and is carried over to the regular season. He scored his first touchdown in the game. Shout out to Gardner Minshew for getting him that opportunity. The offense played well, man. Offense, I know they slowed down in the second half, but they kind of was just phoning it in at that point. You scored 28 points in the first half. You pretty much dominated the game. They put it on cruise control in the second half. As far as the defense go, front seven, dominated. They hit C.J. Stroud. I believe he was hit 9 or 10 times. He was sacked 6 times. Dio Dangbo forced a fumble. Samson Ebukam was flying off the end all game. Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner in the run game was amazing. DeForest Buckner also is looking like an ace pass rusher from the interior, something we used to from him. Kwity Paye with another sack, following up his sack that he had in week 1 against Jacksonville. Zaire Franklin leading the NFL in tackles right now. 30 tackles through 2 weeks. The front seven, Shaq Leonard's not quite back to what he normally is, but he's getting there, man. And this team is buying him the time to get there. But that front seven just not Ziggy Small, EJ Speed with a sack as well. The front seven just dominated this game, man. And it was the reason C.J. Stroud really had no chance from the beginning of it. You know, Texans went down early, so they was forced to throw the ball a lot. So I know the counting stats look a little bit misleading because Stroud had a lot of yards. He had a lot of attempts as well. And the Colts kind of just prevented it, just played prevent for most part of the second half. But early in the game, when it mattered, the Colts front dominated. multiple times they put pressure on CJ Stroud. He really could do nothing in that situation, man. Now, something that's concerning is the secondary. Whew. Secondary, man, y'all look rough. For the most part, it was just Darrell Baker Jr. Darrell Baker, you had a rough time trying to cover Nico Collins. Nico Collins, I believe, had almost 150 yards. It was somewhere in that ballpark. It was ridiculous. The amount of separation Nico Collins was getting, and he's not even a receiver that separates. Like, that was inexcusable the way he played. You made him look like a Pro Bowler. While I like Nico Collins as a player, I think he had 7 for 150 or 7 for 146, I believe. I know he scored a touchdown. That just can't happen. I know the Colts secondary is young, but that's just inexcusable. I know we mad that Juju Brents was inactive, it's a healthy scratch, basically. But the Colts are trying to bring him along slowly. You know, I know he was a second-round draft pick, but he was a guy that was injured for most of the offseason and training camp. And we know how pivotal that time is for a rookie. So you miss OTAs, you miss part of training camp, make it back to the preseason, but he's still not. They still feel like he's not ready to go just yet. So we'll see. We'll monitor that. Maybe the Colts get Jalen Jones some snaps this week instead of Darrell Baker Jr. But I don't know, man. Guts is one of those defensive coordinators that's stuck in his ways. If he picked you in the beginning of the year when it started, he rolled with you kind of till the wheels fall off. I mean, we saw that with Brandon Faison last season when we were saying that, hey, man, you gotta bench him. And it took a while, but he finally did it. So hopefully this is not a similar situation. Maybe Darrell Baker Jr. just had a rough week. Like I said, these guys are young. It's going to be up and down throughout the entire season with these young guys that's in the secondary, especially got guys that's first-time starters and never started before in anywhere, let alone with the coach. So that's the difficulty of what we're facing right now. But All in all, I think a great performance. I think just to harp on the bad would be just nitpicking when you talk about a game that clearly dominated. Uh, so moving off of that, the Colts have a much tougher task this week coming up with the Baltimore Ravens. I know there's history between, Baltimore Ravens, Indianapolis Colts, formerly the Baltimore Colts, obviously, about how the okay, got my first super chat. Oh yeah, I didn't even say like the video, man. Y'all like this so it could show up in the algorithm. That'd be very beneficial. We got our first super chat. Y'all definitely can send in super chat. Shout out my man Patrick Rye. Zay Flowers is going to cook this secondary. Oh boy, yeah, man, yeah. We're definitely gonna talk about that. Cause I got some keys to victory, some things that need to be said, and I'm gonna discuss how the Colts could kind of try to mitigate that and what they need to do to win this game. But if we're talking from an injury standpoint, let's kind of get into it. Colts versus the Baltimore Ravens, 12 o'clock Sunday kickoff. The Colts injury report looks as Ryan Kelly and Anthony Richardson, of course, both didn't practice due to concussions. Quinn Nelson is still bothered by that toe that he has, so he didn't practice, which I think is more just to get him some rest thing. I think he's going to play. Shout out to Mike. Michael McGinnis pulling up, big bro, saying what up. Uh, we have Kenny Moore, who's on here with a knee, but was a limited participant. And we have Grover Stewart, who's a limited participant with his foot. So hopefully those guys get to put together a full practice before the week is out. Like I said, as far as Anthony Richardson and Ryan Kelly, if either of those guys are going to play this Sunday, they need to put together a limited participation and a full participation. Shout out, got another super chat. Shout out my guy Anthony Perry, $1.99. Says I have faith in y'all, bro. He's a Tampa Bay Bucks fan. Shout out to the Bucks, man. 2-0. Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Wouldn't have expected that, but here we are. Baltimore's injury report is a little longer than ours. As far as the did not practice today for the Baltimore Ravens, Odell Beckham, who's dealing with an ankle, he got banged up in the game. Last game he came out, and I think he went back in, but he's a little hobbled. Jadeveon Clowney was out with an illness. Devin Duvernay with a shoulder. Justice Hill, the backup running back, has a foot. Marlon Humphrey's out with a foot. Tyler Lindenbaum, their starting center. Odafe Owe, pass rusher, is out with an ankle. Ronnie Staley, their starting tackle, is out with a knee. And Marcus Williams didn't practice. Did not participate due to a pectoral that he injured early this season. Their injury report is looking shaky too, man. They're missing a lot more starters than we're missing, but they have one key starter, probably the only starter that matters the most, and that's Lamar Jackson. I'm gonna take a second to take a drink while y'all process on Lamar Jackson. I took that sip because I'm terrified of Lamar Jackson. Yes, I am terrified of him and what he could do to this Colts defense. Colts have always struggled trying to stop and contain mobile quarterbacks. They have been our Achilles heel since forever. It sucks. It sucks trying to stop those guys. It sucks trying to game plan for those guys. As a guy that talks to a lot of defensive coordinators or D-line coaches or linebacker coaches, position coaches on the defensive side of the ball, I talked to a lot of those guys throughout the week, and they all hate preparing for mobile quarterbacks. It's good that the Colts have one of those on our side now, so teams can hate preparing for us. But it's definitely going to be a headache dealing with Lamar Jackson and that Baltimore Ravens team. I do like the Colts' ability to keep this game close if they can do a couple of things. So let's get into it. Keys to victory, in my opinion. Let's talk about the keys to victory, what the Colts need to do to win this game. Priority number one, as I alluded to it earlier, The Colts must contain Lamar Jackson. What I can say about what I've watched from Lamar, because I'm still in the process of diving into the film on the new Lamar, and what they're running with their new OC, whose name is slipping my mind, from Georgia, Todd Monken. They're much more of a traditional passing team. Um, they're no longer running option and a ton of just read option plays. Lamar's playing traditional football for the first time in his NFL career and is operating from the pocket and is making some great throws in the process. Like I saw a clip of him hitting kind of a seam ball against single high safety, which he's going to see a lot of single high safety playing against this Gus Bradley defense because we know that's something that he loves. Lamar has been dialed in from the pocket, man, but he's still showing you enough of that escapability to keep you honest and to where you have to play him with a spy or pay extra attention to his running ability, man. He's spooky out there right now. Like the way he's playing at a very high level. And I didn't know if he could ever be a traditional type quarterback and operate from the pocket. Although we saw it kind of at Louisville, it's different when you're doing it in the NFL. And that was always the way you play Lamar. You kind of just single high him, keep an extra guy in the box. You kind of want to keep him contained. That's priority number one, from escaping the pocket and make him beat you with his arm from inside the pocket. Well, that's absolutely what he's doing right now. They just beat a very good Cincinnati Bengals team. Well, a team I think is very good. They haven't been looking that great this season. And I think some of that's due to Joe Burrow not being 100%. But Lamar had answers for a very good Bengals defense. And he was in his bag, man. He has a lot of weapons for the first time in his career. We haven't seen him with, he now has Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar's catching touchdowns. Who would have thought? Nelson Aguilar, a guy who drops everything. Not even picking anything specific. He just drops it all. But he's playing well. Mark Andrews is still Mark Andrews, a premier tight end. And let's not forget that dreaded Monday night game when the last time we played Lamar, the Colts had that game, man. The Colts had that game. But their secondary got decimated with injuries. And Lamar just had the game of his life throwing the ball. I believe he threw for over 400 yards in that game. It was something crazy like that. And they came back and beat us in overtime. But Lamar's one of those players, man. He can have a special game. He can just change the game instantly on so many levels. So priority number one has to be containing him. I'm really encouraged by the way this defensive line is playing, though. And I think defensive line have the ability to control the game. While this is probably the best offensive line that they've faced so far, I do think the way this defensive line and this front seven is playing, if they continue to do those things, they can make it very uncomfortable for Lamar. And that has to continue for the Colts to have any shot at pulling off the upset. I believe the Colts are 7-point underdogs right now, which I guess is fair since they're on the road, and whether the quarterback is playing is up in the air or not. So once we get a little more clarity on that, I think you'll see the line change. But I think if this defensive line plays the way that they can play and have been playing this season, then I think they give the Colts a shot to be able to pull this game off. My next key is on offense, the Colts have to run the ball, and they have to run it effectively. Shout out to Zach Moss. I ain't give Zach Moss no love earlier for the last game, and I apologize because he played every snap on offense except one. Do you know how difficult that is these days? No NFL team is running one running back out there every snap. Just not happening. But that just shows you how much faith the Colts have in Zach Moss, who, broke his forearm weeks ago and hasn't practiced. He's barely practiced. He's barely spent time on the field, and his first time back with the team They trust him enough to give him all of those snaps. Now, some of that was due to the fact that Deion Jackson had probably the worst game I've seen a running back ever have in my life in week one. But Zach Moss also played really well, man. I mean, it was nothing explosive, not gonna lie. It wasn't no big plays, but if the offensive line blocked for him to get 4 yards, 5 yards, he was getting 4 yards, 5 yards. He kept the offense on schedule. Something that is so important when you're playing football, man. You have to keep the offense on schedule because if not, you get into these 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 10 situations, and those are just significantly more difficult to convert on a regular basis. So Zach Moss, shout out to him for doing that, man. The Colts have to find a way to run the ball this week, man. If they can run the ball, then I think that gives them a good shot. Cause I think the play action game will be there, regardless of who's playing, whether it's Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew. They have to run the ball. I'm significantly more confident in their run game if Anthony Richardson is the starter than I am if Gardner Minshew is the starter. But Patrick said the Colts could be 2-0 if Moss started week one. Hey man, I'm not mad at that take. You might be 100% right. The Colts, let's not forget the Colts had a 4-quarter lead on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I know they ended up losing by I think 10, but don't forget the Colts was up in the 4th quarter of that game. Hi there, shot. Colts fan all the way from Panama City, Panama. Preach about the run game. We need a historic day from Moss to have a chance to win. Hey, man. I think it's Augustin or Augustin. Ramirez. I definitely know Ramirez, though. Shout out my guy, man. Guy I interact with a lot on Twitter. One of my dogs, one of my favorite supporters. Always look out. Yeah, man. Running game. That's how we got to move the ball on offense. I think the pass catchers will be solid. I'm not a huge fan of this Baltimore pass rush. I think they still have a lot to prove in the pass rush department. I know they sacked C.J. Stroud, I think 5 times week one, but we sacked him 6 times week 2. So what? So what that saying? We ain't worried about Baltimore and that weak pass rush. Don't worry about the David Clowney and Odafe Owe. He don't get sacks anyway. All right, Mike. Takeaway number 3. Talk about you can't turn the ball over. Protect the football. Protect the football. The Colts did a great job of that this Sunday. We seen it was crucial in week 1 when Deion Jackson had that fumble. I actually was worried a little bit in week 2 when the first play of the game, I think Michael Pittman caught a pass and ran for first down and fumbled, but it went out of bounds, so we was all good. But I was a little nervous. Like, that's how we starting, really? That's what we doing? But yeah, the Colts have to protect the football, man. You want to limit the amount of opportunities that Baltimore's offense is going to have. You don't want Lamar Jackson touching the ball too many times. He's a guy that the more opportunities you give him, it's only a matter of time before he's going to hit on the explosive play. And I'm sure the Colts know that as well. It's going to be tough for them to overcome a game if they turn the ball over multiple times. I mean, I'm not mad if you turn it over once at some point in time, but if you get into the area of multiple turnovers, this offense is not equipped to handle a game like that. So I think it's best, to try to limit the turnovers, play sound defense, make it just difficult on this Baltimore offense. One thing I have heard though, for us teams that's game planning for Lamar, it's a lot easier now that they're kind of playing a conventional offense. Although you're not sure what they're going to throw at you, it's just not as much of a headache as the prior offense that Baltimore used to run, because that offense used to keep guys up at night because it literally was no one else running it. They were the only team playing that way. And it used to be so frustrating for a lot of defensive coaches to have to adjust to that. And so I do hear now that they're playing a more, conventional style offense, that a lot of defensive coaches feel better about their game plans that they're coming up with for these guys. Do we have any questions, anything y'all want me to discuss or talk about. I'm trying to see if there was anything else that I really, really wanted to talk about between the Colts and the Baltimore Ravens. The Colts being 1-1, man. I'm not gonna say I'm shocked, but they really could be 2-0 right now, and that's crazy. The fact that Jacksonville game was a winnable game, man. That Jacksonville game was a winnable game. I'm really hoping Anthony Richardson makes a 100% recovery soon. I tweeted out earlier they probably should sit him and start Minshew, but you know, at the end of the day, it's not my decision. Like I have no say so. I just gave my opinion because I'm thinking big picture. I'm always gonna think big picture, and I'm always gonna side with players. That's things about me, you know. Like I'm always gonna side with the player. As having a brother that played professional football, it's having a ton of friends that either played in the NFL or is coaching in the NFL. I'm always gonna side with the players. Um, one of my best friends, had a nephew that played. Where was he at? With Miami. He's playing special teams. He played with Miami last season, and he suffered a concussion. And I just saw like the damage it did, the custom shades that he had to go buy, and just the effect that it had on him, man. Those concussions are no joke, man. Like they're a really, really difficult thing to deal with. The headaches that come along with them, and just how the slightest things just bother you, or give you a headache, or hurt your eyes. It's nothing to play with, man. So that's why I was just when I was tweeting earlier, I was just thinking about that. You know, I was thinking about other people that I've talked to that have had concussions and was able to clear protocol. Like doctors cleared them to play, and they went out there the very next week and played, and just didn't feel right even after the game. Whether they got hurt for a longer period of time or not, you know, sometimes when you suffer those injuries, we have no idea of the long-term damage that it's doing to you. But some of those guys, man, you can clear protocol and not be right. That's why I try to tell people just because, yeah, the doctor is a doctor for sure. He know a hell of a lot more about, you know, the brain than I do. But just seeing it up close from people that I know and the effect that that concussion had on them and how they was able to clear protocol and go back out there and play the next week, but still wasn't right. And they knew they wasn't right. But because they wanted to play so bad, they went out there and did it anyway. And it showed in their performance. Sometimes you gotta protect these guys from themselves. And Anthony Richardson's a 21-year-old kid, you know, like of course he's going to do everything he can to play. He wants to play. This guy's obsessed with being the best. And that's part of the reason I love the kid. You know, like he really wants to be the best. He wants to put his team in the best possible position to win. And you can't blame him for that. You should admire him for that, actually. You know, a guy that's willing to do anything, put his body on the line, you know, don't care about risking further injury. But somebody has to protect this, somebody's job to protect him from himself as well. You know, somebody has to look out for his best interests from a health perspective and the team best interests on the long term end of the spectrum. You know, anytime you see the Colts being cautious with a guy like Drew Overtree, they're probably going to err on the side of caution with a guy like Anthony Richardson, you know, who's, like I said earlier, the face of the franchise. Now, unless he can convince them that he's really 100%, you know, showing no lingering effects and is really ready to go, then I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see it. Hopefully, you know, I would love to see him play personally. Do I think he should play? Probably not. But the fan in me wants to see Anthony Richardson versus Lamar Jackson. Like, who don't want to see that? And there's somebody was tweeting me earlier. You know, there's people. It's going to be their only opportunity to see Anthony Richardson that stay on the East Coast. You know, that's stay in the Baltimore, the DMV area. That's going to go out there to that game and see. That's Colts fans. They paid their money in the beginning of the season to see Anthony Richardson. So I understand that. Like, I for sure understand that. You don't want to spend your money to go see Gardner Minshew. Although Minshew Mania could be fun. It was fun Sunday. Shout out Patrick. Patrick hit me with another donation. Appreciate you, my boy. Patrick Ride for the $4.99. said, let Minshew start the next 2 weeks. Then on week 5 at Lucas, Richardson and JT run out of the tunnel together and beat the Titans 52-10. That's hilarious. The Colts probably not going to do that because if he don't play this Sunday, he'll be ready to go against the Rams. Plus, I got a lot of stake in that Rams game, so I need to see him suit up against the Rams. And literally, as we speak, somebody just tweeted me that they live in Maryland and need to see AR. I wonder if they're watching the show when they just tweeted that. This is just coincidental. But either way, shout out to them. But yeah, man, like I don't even want to get excited about Jonathan Taylor coming yet. That's gonna be a moment. You know, if they can patch things up behind the scenes and Jonathan Taylor decides to play this year out as an Indianapolis Colt, when he gets here, this offense is going to be spooky, man. It's going to be scary hours for the NFL. But the Colts do have a chance to put the NFL on notice if they can somehow find a way to pull this game off this week. I'm not going to call my shot right here because I'll probably put an article out letting you know what the Colts need to do to win. I'm probably going to write an article. And I'm going to call my shot in the article. I just need to find out who playing quarterback first before I call my shot. That's going to matter. That's definitely going to matter. But, man, I appreciate y'all pulling up. That's pretty much everything that I have for this week. Next week, we'll be getting prepared for the Rams. I was thinking that game, as most of you know. Shout out Patrick saying he liked the article that Dustin wrote about how the Colts could offer Taylor a contract similar to Jones. Yeah, you know, stack it with incentives and then let him make his own decision in the offseason about what do you want to do. You know, you probably promise him you won't use the tag on him. Thanks what Kansas City did with Chris Jones. I think the Colts are doing work behind the scenes. I'm going to just say that. The Colts have been busy behind the scenes. They're attempting to make amends. Let's just go with that. All right, man. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I will holler at you guys next week. Let's go beat Baltimore. Peace.